Are we good with this one? Are you getting the architecture now? Tomorrow when you attend the interview, they will ask you, what is your project architecture? Now, are we following monolith architecture or we are following microservices architecture to develop our application? Are we following monolith architecture or we are following microservices architecture? Guys, come on. Are we following monolith architecture or we are following microservices architecture? We are following microservices architecture to develop our applications. Whatever the functionality is required for our project, I'm not developing that functionality in the single project. I have developed the functionality by dividing into multiple REST APIs. Multiple REST APIs. So do you know how to create the cloud database? Did I discuss about how to create cloud database in the AWS? Already I have spent 20 days of time for the AWS. I explained how to create the database in the AWS cloud, how to store the data in the AWS cloud now. The only thing that we need to do here is, guys, as of now, we are using H2 database properties. So from now, instead of H2 database properties, what we are going to do, we are going to configure RDS cloud database. Then we are going to run our application. Then it is going to insert the record into database tables. Now here we have application.yml like this. We need to create the cloud database. We need to create the cloud database and we are going to set up like this. Server port number, let me here cloud database we are going to configure. So MySQL database we need to create that MySQL database username, password we need to configure, driver class name we need to configure. We need to create the database in the cloud. Here instead of configuring the data source name as user management, now I will configure the database name as a HIS. My project is a HIS project. Now I am going to configure this. First one is plans API. Now the same order we are going to configure these details, guys. First one is the plans API. For the plans API, you see here plans API, go to the YML file. Plans API is the first API, so I'm going to configure the port number as 1111. Data source properties, show SQL true, DDL auto update. That means if the table is not available, it is going to insert that, it is going to create the table to insert the data. This is my MySQL database URL. My database name is going to be HIS. Username, password, driver class name, show SQL true, DDL auto update. Now same properties I need to configure in all the APIs. Now plans API. Next one, user management. User management. Here SMTP properties and port numbers will be available. This port number I am configuring as 2222. Database name is HIS. Port number, this is the second API I have developed, so I am configuring this API as a 2222 port number. This is my data source properties. These are my SMTP properties. Next one, AR API is available. AR is our third API that we have created. Go to resources, YML file. Now I'm giving the port number as 3333 for the AR. AR API also will communicate with the MySQL database. Database name HIS. AR API. After the AR, DC API is available. Go to DC API YML file. Go to DC API YML file. In the DC API also, we are going to configure these details, data source properties. Data source properties. Okay. So AR API port number is what? AR API port number 3333. DC API I'm configuring as 4444. DC API also going to communicate with the same database HIS. After a DC, now we have ED API. ED API also should communicate with that database application.yml. Now here port number 5555. ED API is running on the port number 5555. After the ED CO, after the ED CO API, go to YML file. Go to YML file. Here also we need to configure this. 6666 we have configured here for CO API. CO API also using SMTP properties to send the file as a attachment. CO API is ready. The last one is reports API. The last one is the reports API. Let me make it as 22. Reports API. Reports API. Reports API also should communicate with the database. So here I'm going to configure this as a YML. Convert the properties to YML file. Application.yml. Configure these details. This is also reports API also communicating with the high HIS. Now in the reports API earlier we used insurance plan, right, entity. Now plan ID, plan name, holder name, status, benefit amount, all these things we are getting from eligibility details table. We are going to get that from the eligibility details table. So the citizen eligibility determined, eligibility storing in the eligibility details table. Eligibility details table is available. Plan ID, plan name, plan number, holder name, holder SSN, benefit amount, denial reason, whatever the data that we need for this reports generation, we are going to get from eligibility details table. We are going to get from eligibility details table. Okay, Lombok annotation we need to add for this in the reports API. Whatever the reports API we have, we are going to use that API. Project Lombok in the reports API. Go to form.xml. Swagger is there. Lombok. Yeah. Reports API is going to communicate with eligibility details table. Plan ID. Here we will have a case number also. Private integer case number. At the rate column name is equal to case number. Okay, denial reason also will be available. Plan status, benefit amount, plan name, holder name, status, benefit amount, denial reason. Private string denial reason. At the rate column name is equal to denial reason. Denial reason will be available to retrieve the data. That's it. So earlier we created a separate table to insert the dummy data. Now we don't need the dummy data because our ED API is ready. ED API going to insert the data into eligibility details. Reports API will take the data from the eligibility details table. ED API will insert the data into eligibility details. Reports API will fetch the data from the eligibility details to tell which record is approved, which record is denied. That data we can retrieve from reports API. So with this, database configuration is also ready for all the APIs. 14th API, 15th, 16th is not there. 17th is SSA web, that is for third party. AR API, DC API, ED API, CO API, reports API. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So total we are having 7 APIs and 12 tables are available. 7 APIs are available, 12 tables are available for our project. Are you getting the clear picture now? What are the APIs we have developed and what is the purpose of these APIs and how to use the DB? We need to create the MySQL DB. We need to create the MySQL DB in the AWS cloud. That MySQL connector we need to configure in our project's form.xml because every API should communicate with the MySQL database. So we need to have MySQL connector dependency in the form.xml. So do we have MySQL connector here? We don't have the MySQL connector. So what we have to do, go to mbnrepository.com. Go to mbnrepository.com, search for MySQL connector. MySQL connector with Java. If Java application want to connect with the MySQL database, then we need to take this MySQL connector dependency. Now, do we need a H2? We don't need the H2. H2 task is completed. H2 only for the development purpose. Now my development is completed. I'm going for cloud database. For that, to work with the cloud database, we are adding MySQL connector, MySQL dependency, MySQL connector dependency. We need to add in all projects of form.xml because all projects are using DB communication. So every project should communicate with the database. For that, we need to add cloud dependencies. That is connector dependency we have to add. MySQL connector is already available in the user management. Next one, AR API. AR API also should have MySQL connector. Comment H2. H2 we use it for development practice purpose. Now in the real time, this cloud DB will be configured. MySQL connector Java. Very good. Now go to DC. DC pom.xml. In the DC also H2 is available. Comment this H2DB. Comment this H2DB. Now we have MySQL connector. MySQL connector. Now go to ED API. In the ED API pom.xml also. Comment this H2. Comment this H2. Configure MySQL connector. MySQL connector. Go to CO API pom.xml. CO API pom.xml. Here also we have H2 dependency, I think so. Let's comment that H2 and configure MySQL connector. Configure MySQL connector in the CO API. Same thing in the reports API also. Go to pom.xml. Change the H2 to MySQL connector. Change the H2 to MySQL connector. Got it. So with this our APIs are ready. Let's update all these projects. Total 7 APIs are available. Clean them. Cleaning all the projects. Good. These are unknown errors, we can delete them, no problem. Okay. So with this, we have all the APIs ready in the backend. With this, we have all the APIs ready in the backend. Look at this diagram. So anybody having questions now regarding this architecture, please raise your hand. We have developed all the 7 APIs. We have developed all the 7 APIs. For the 7 APIs, earlier we used H2 database. Now I configured cloud database. So single database for all the APIs we have in our application. So total there are 7 APIs available. Do you know what is the purpose of these 7 APIs now? So we know what is the purpose of these 7 APIs. Yeah, Mohit, what is your doubt?
सर यूजर मैनेजमेंट एपीआई में क्या JWT टोकन वगैरह यूज नहीं करेंगे?
Security I will explain, sir. Currently there is no security here. We will configure the security. We will discuss how to configure security, how to develop gateway for that. We will discuss about it. I will explain you that concept.
और सर मतलब as soon as possible अगर डॉकर करवा दें क्योंकि सर अभी कंपनी में हम लोग की नीड है डॉकर की.
Sir, Docker already I have explained the Docker concept. There is a video in the YouTube. 4 hours I have explained the Docker. If you go through that video, you can understand it. If you have urgency, I will share that video in the group. Please go through that. I have conducted a workshop for the Docker. 4 hours I have taken.
सर इस प्रोजेक्ट को भी तो डॉकर पे करेंगे ना कॉन्फ़िगर?
Yeah, we will configure one API with the Docker. I will show you that. All right, guys. Sanjala, what's your doubt?
So I have some confusion regarding this. You know, the one of the functionality where we email the state, like where we email the users.
Yeah, tell me, what is your confusion?
So the confusion is right. When we work with the email, we need to give those particular emails. So right now we are working in iterating it and then every email address yes, we are sending the status, right, with the exemption report, you're denied.
Yes.
But sir, those emails, I was trying with a few email, but then other email ID couldn't work because we need less access. Some special access is needed. We need to change some settings.
No, no, no. Here we are using Gmail SMTP. So Gmail SMTP will not allow you to send the too many emails frequently. Okay. So in the company will provide you their own SMTP server. By using that, you can send multiple emails parallel. Here we have a limitation with the Gmail SMTP. Gmail is just for testing purpose we are using. In the product,
Right. No wonder it wasn't working because I was trying with different email IDs with different servers also, like some Hotmail and Gmail and all. But then I figured out like there are different SMTP settings for every.
yes, right. So currently we are using Gmail SMTP just for testing purpose. We don't have any company SMTP here. We can't use it. Tomorrow when you join in the company, they will give you company SMTP details for you.
So one more thing. So because we are handling like if we are handling like thousands of records, so how do we execute batch processing here?
That is the next topic I have to explain. So once this integration is completed, the next topic is how to improve our project execution by using multi-threading in the correspondence. I will explain that correspondence.
Include batch processing, right?
Exactly, right.
Yeah, and so third is reminders of please send me the sample CV. I need to send it that the consultant is waiting.
Sure. I will send it today.
Thank you, sir.
Right.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, hi, sir.
Sir, we have right now multiple APIs. So how to communicate from one API to another API, like AR API to CO API?
Why you need to communicate here?
So because we have to, transferring the data, right?
Data is already there in the database, na? Why you need to communicate?
But sir, we are working on a different.
I understand. In this scenario, you no need to communicate. If you really want to communicate, AR API to communicate with the DC, then you can use a REST template or web client. You can communicate. Na?
Yes, sir. Yeah, that is question.
Yes. You can do that by using REST template web client. But actually, in this scenario, there is no requirement to communicate from AR API to DC API because AR is storing the data into the database table. DC also will access the data from the database table. So one database we have for our project. So here API to API communication not required because ED API storing the data into eligibility table, CO API taking the data from eligibility table, reports API taking the data from eligibility table. So there is no need of ED to CO, CO to report communication. But if at all it is required to communicate from ED API to CO, then by using REST template we can establish this communication. By using web client we can establish this communication.
Okay. So sir, when we will learn a web client, sir?
When we will learn web client? Are you not attending Spring Boot classes?
No, sir.
In the Spring Boot I have already explained, sir. Here I have used REST template. The communication to the SSN API we are doing by using REST template. Here we can remove the REST template and we can configure the web client also. I will show you that. Okay.
Sir.
Yeah. Guys, I realized that most of the people who joined for 19 JRTP are not good with the Spring Boot microservices. That is the reason you guys are facing some problems. Prerequisites are not there. That is the reason some issue happened with this batch. Most of the people who attended the 19 JRTP don't have the proper prerequisites. That's why these guys are facing the problem. Yeah, hi Sanjeev. Sanjeev, lot of noise coming from your side, Sanjeev.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. No, you just type a message in the chat. Lot of background noise is coming. Type a message in the chat box. I will read it. Guys, now, are you clear with this project architecture and what are the APIs available in the backend and what is the purpose of the APIs? Are you guys comfortable with this logic, this diagram? People asking me, Ashok, when you will explain the architecture of the project? So this is this. What are the APIs available? What is the purpose of the API? What are the tables available? That I have explained now. Yeah.
The architecture and design pattern is the same, is it?
No, no, design patterns are different. So in the interview, they will ask you, what are the design patterns you have used in the project? Okay.
And what do we say?
I will tell you that. So still we are in the integration part now.
हेलो
Yeah.
हाँ सर इसमें क्या वो जूल कीपर वगैरह यूज करेंगे क्या कि जिससे सारी एपीआई केवल एक ही पोर्ट पे चले जैसे
API gateway we can use. I will use it. Okay.
In my AWS account, the billing payment is came, sir. Amount
That means-
982 rupees.
That means you are not stopping the services after you are using them.
No, sir. AWS instance, I
Ah,
have
that-
stopped, sir. That's why.
No, not only EC2 instance, it might be a database or it might be a S3 bucket. N number of services you are using in the AWS, right? After your practice is completed, if you have not stopped that service, then the bill will be calculated. You have to take care of that. Whatever the service you are using in the AWS, after your practice is completed, you have to stop it. Otherwise, bill will be calculated.
What
Do
I
one
need,
thing. How much bill is generated?
it's 982 rupees.
If you want to pay, you can pay and you can continue the same account. Otherwise, terminate your account.
Okay, sir.
Right? Terminate your account.
Yeah, sure, sir.
hello sir
Yep.
so it is possible to use two different databases in the same project sir?
Yeah, we can use, sir. That is multi-database connectivity.
Yes
You
sir.
need to configure multiple data sources.
Yes, sir. But if I'll use two different database, so it will some point to in coding side. This data will go to this database.
That you need to define that. So you are having a repository, right? You need to configure multiple data sources. Which repository should communicate with the which database, that we need to configure. Configuration is required for that.
So this can be also done, sir? You will
Sir, everything you are asking about me, that is a Spring Boot concept basically. You just go to Google and you just type it. Connecting with the multiple databases in Spring Boot. They will give you. You are asking this will be covered, that will be covered. That is actually Spring Boot concept. Now, in the Spring Boot classes, I am going to explain that. In this project batch, I am not going to explain that. If you want to learn this, so just go to this Google, type that. They will give you here. This is going to communicate with one database. This is going to communicate with another database. So like this, you need to configure multiple data sources. When you configure multiple data sources, then the configuration classes you have to write for that. See here, this is the configuration class writing. Primary DB configuration and the secondary DB configuration will be available. If you refer this blog, then you can understand how to connect with that. Try to learn the things on your own. So if you are depending on me to cover, then the course will take 1 year.
Yeah, of course, sir, because this is also interview question, sir.
Yeah, that's
So
interview question. In the Spring Boot, we are going to explain that concept, not in the project batch.
But
Right.
this is real-time project, so we will.
Fine, sir. Then I will do one thing. In the Spring Boot, I have not explained that concept as of now. So I will allow you people to attend for that concept.
Yes, please. Because we have to give in. If suppose we have connected two database, so we have to give in some priority base, right? I mean, initially connect with this database and other database.
Yeah,
So maybe this configuration required, right, sir?
right. Fine, guys. Now, can you guys create a AWS RDS database and can you configure that in all the APIs and can you test your APIs? Can you guys? I have configured all the APIs with the cloud database. So can you guys also do that cloud DB creation in the AWS and configure that, test it, and once your testing is completed, then delete the database. Because if you use the database for multiple times, I mean, if you are keeping the database for a long time, then the bill will be generated for you. Once your testing is completed, then you drop the database and you delete the database from RDS cloud. Okay, so you know how to create the database in the AWS RDS. Once the database is created, you need to configure the database credentials in our application YML file. Once it is done, then we can run our APIs and we can test them. Once the testing is completed, we can stop it. Okay, so in the tomorrow session, I'm going to tell you how to work with multi-threading in the correspondence API. In the correspondence API currently, we are writing a loop to process the triggers to generate the notices one by one. We are generating a notice in our correspondence API. If you run the programs one by one, if you run the programs one by one, then it will take a lot of time to execute. Okay, now here it will take a lot of time to execute, to process all the triggers. How to improve the performance of our execution by using multi-threading? That multi-threading scenario I will explain in the tomorrow session. Are you clear with this? Fine. Still anybody having a questions on this diagram? What is the API? What is the purpose of the API? Anybody having any questions on this? Yeah, Manikanta, what is your doubt?
Sir, I have another doubt. Like DAOs and ATOs will create a different project and how?
Yes, you can keep all the entities in one project. Then you can package them as a jar file. That jar file we need to use in all the projects, so that you no need to create all the entities in all the projects.
Okay, sir. Okay. Thank you.
Right. Next one. Hi Ratnaraj, what is your doubt?
Sir, good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Sir, I'm in Hyderabad for my interview, sir. When it happens, Java 20%.
Yeah, sir. Actually, from last 15 days, I'm also not in Hyderabad. Yesterday night only I came to Hyderabad. Today I will go to institute and I will check which companies are ready to conduct the placements drive. So I will update you tomorrow.
Exactly, sir. I'm looking for that one. Also, I attended for interview in Kugatpalli, sir. The issue of salary issues like that, sir.
Yeah, sure, sir. I will go to that. Today I will go to institute and I will check it. What are the companies are ready to conduct the fresh interview? I will update you.
Yeah, exactly, sir. Give me strategies, preparation strategies also, sir.
Sure.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else having questions?
Sir, internal calls also can explain it like how one service to another service.
Sir, that is in the Spring Boot course I am explaining P and client how to communicate. Are you attending SDMS batch?
No, sir.
In the Spring Boot yesterday only I have explained how to communicate from one service to another service using P and client. You guys are asking complete Spring Boot syllabus here. Please remember this is JRTP. Here I am going to discuss about how to develop your project. All the concepts you are asking from the Spring Boot class. If I want to cover those concepts all here, our course will take 1 year. Please do understand that there are two different courses. They are having two different syllabuses for that. Okay. Yeah, hi Rituraj, what's your doubt?
No, actually, just Manikanta asked something there, but new concept that you have said that for the jar file we will compile all those things. That I have not know what this means.
Sure, I will tell you. So whatever the entity classes we have, we are creating entity classes in the multiple projects, right? So how to avoid that duplicate classes? That is what he is asking.
So for that we have option to create a jar file, right?
Yep, we can create the jar. Guys, can you complete this integration? Can you test all your APIs with AWS Cloud Database? I already explained what is AWS Cloud, what is RDS, how to create the database, and how to configure that AWS RDS database credentials in the properties file. And we need to test it. Once your testing is completed, delete the cloud database, otherwise bill will be generated. So if you want to avoid the billing, once your testing is completed, then delete it. So tomorrow we are going to test this all the APIs in my system. I will set up a cloud database. I already configured that. Tomorrow I will test all these APIs in my system. Once these are completed, then we will take the correspondence API. We will implement a multi-threading for the correspondence API. Okay, that I will discuss in the tomorrow session. Thank you guys.
రక్తనాళాల గురించి అంటే బీపీ గురించి చెప్పాం కదా, రక్తనాళ సంబంధమైన సమస్య బీపీ. మనలో రక్తనాళాలు సుమారుగా 60,000 మైళ్ళ పొడవుండి ఉంటాయి. ఈ రక్త